Okay, dear friends, now we have lecture 4 in our series of Exodus, and we're going to look at the 10 plagues today, or rather the first 9. You know, when I was studying Luther many years ago, there was a list of all the particular relics that they had from the New and Old Testament in the Castle Church at Wittenberg, and they had a box which contained the darkness, some of the darkness that Moses spread over Egypt. And of course the darkness is now the 9th plague. So we'll wait till we come to that. But wasn't that marvellous to have a bit of the darkness that Moses spread over Egypt? No wonder Luther retaliated a bit to all that. Okay, so what I'd like to do firstly is to do a little bit of an introduction. Then I'd like to look at the first 3 plagues, and then the second 3 plagues, and then the last 3 plagues. The word plague may or may not be the best word to use. We could say the 3 strikes that God, Yahweh, took on Egypt, or we could say the 3 signs, the 9 signs. We're not quite sure of what's the best translation of the term in this context. Now, so we do have 3 lots of 3 plagues, skillfully put together in a narrative which flows. In the old J-source, it seems, there are only 7 plagues. And we can look at those 7 plagues if we pick up Psalm 78 or Psalm 105. You'll notice that there are 7 plagues there. But when the redactor came, as we know, for the final putting together of this book of Exodus, he made sure there were 3 lots of 3 plagues. We've got a slide for you now, just to show you what they look like. Yes, they're there. Now, the older J-source looked upon these plagues as a punishment for Pharaoh not letting the Israelites go. So, for example, in the second plague, the plague of frogs, this is what is said. Let my people go to offer me worship. If you refuse to let them go, know that I will plague the whole of your country with frogs. If you don't do this, you're going to be punished with frogs. But the P source, and those parts of the narrative influenced by P, tend to stress for us that the plagues are a manifestation of the power of Yahweh. And the power of Yahweh is confronting the forces of empire, the forces of the evil empire. Shades of George Bush, I'm not sure. And for example, in the 7th plague, it goes like this, the plague for hail. Let my people go to offer me worship. This time I mean to send all my plagues on you and your courtiers and subjects, so that you shall learn that there is no one like me in the whole world. So you'll learn that there's no one like me in the whole world. And I've let you live for this, to make you see my power and have my name published throughout all the earth. Isn't that extraordinary? So the plagues are showing the extraordinary power and majesty of Yahweh, King of all the earth. And this is a dramatic confrontation between Moses and Aaron on the one hand, and Pharaoh and the magicians and priests on the other. And they will gradually lose power. So we're going to see that happen over the course of these 9 plagues. Now, we might ask a little bit about what's really happening here. Why are there these plagues? What's it all about? Well, Walter Brueggemann, who for me is perhaps the finest Old Testament scholar in the English-speaking world, says that this material of the plagues, in fact, is the central material of the whole book of Exodus in his eyes. And the reason he says is because the plagues, the way they're used by the redactor in this, are showing us their portents, their signs of God's great sovereignty, God's ultimate rule over the earth. And that is what the Israelites and the Egyptians are learning. And the Egyptians will experience, therefore, Yahweh as the sovereign one, not Pharaoh. And Pharaoh will in fact say, please leave. Little by little, Pharaoh acknowledges that Yahweh is sovereign. He even will ask forgiveness for not following Yahweh. And eventually he will say, you go and serve Yahweh, O Israelites. And Israel gradually knows that God's sovereignty is stronger than the sovereignty of Pharaoh. And Walter Brueggemann says this, by the middle of the plague cycle, Israel has disengaged from the empire of Pharaoh. It cries no more to it. It expects nothing from it. It acknowledges it in no way whatsoever. It knows that empire can't keep its promises and knows that nothing is either owed to it or expected of it. The Israelites gradually disengage from empire and are open to God and the newness that God's going to offer the Jewish people. So the slaves are learning to become empowered. They are becoming empowered through their faith in Yahweh, and they're beginning to engage in history, in the greatest story of their lives, the Exodus. They know Yahweh has heard their cry. They know Yahweh is acting on their behalf against Pharaoh, and their hope dawns that they will be saved. It's a little bit like what happened to the blacks in America during the civil rights movement. Little by little, as they came together, as they heard speakers and so on, they understood that the might of the white supremacy in the States was losing power. The same too as the poor in Latin America. As they came together more and more, through little miracles happening, they had power. They were empowered to do more. And the power of the landowners, in many cases, fell. We can see that happen. We saw that happen in an extraordinary way for the peoples of Eastern Europe too, when the wall came down. The so-called empires just lost power because it was taken by the people. Terence Fretheim says that it's really the plagues are an overturning of the blessing of creation. And God, through Moses, is going to restore creation to its proper way of functioning. And he's going to, in Fretheim's vision, the Exodus really is the new creation that the Israelite people are going to live and show all peoples how to live. Now, of course you're asking, as we all ask, did they really happen? Well, that's not the best way of looking at it. We've got no idea of knowing. But the way they're written, it's clear that it's a drama. And it's very clear that some things couldn't happen after other things happen. Because in one case, all the land is destroyed. Then in another case, the firstborn of everything are going to be destroyed. But they've already been destroyed if all the land was destroyed, and so on. So, does that make sense? So, if we look at it logically or historically, it doesn't really hold together. So we've got to take it as a drama, showing us the struggle between Pharaoh and